Hi everyone, how you going? Welcome to another episode of Afterlife Pod. My name is Nick Dove, and here we go again with another episode. Hope you're enjoying another day in paradise and ready to go on another adventure. This one is from a man called Duane, Duane. All right, let's go. What started out as a minor health annoyance took a turn for the worst. The doctor handling my case called in a doctor from the Stanford Medical Center. After a thorough examination, my doctor was optimistic. He said they were developing a new breakthrough operation for what, until now, had been an untreatable condition. Stanford University was about to do another test case operation, and my doctor felt I might be an excellent candidate for the new procedure. The surgery could offer significant relief if all went well, and if the surgery didn't work, my prognosis wasn't good anyway. To my wife and I, there was no question as to our decision. Without the surgery, where would I be? More testing began. I was poked and prodded everywhere and relieved of bodily fluids I didn't know I had. In spite of what the doctors had initially said, once all the tests were completed, it seemed the prognosis wasn't so bright after all. The doctors felt my condition had deteriorated too far for me to survive the operation. Apparently, my medical situation led to an extreme vulnerability to heart attacks and strokes. There was a distinct possibility that I would die on the operating table. Even if I were willing to risk the new procedure, no doctor wanted to operate on a man whom they felt might die on the operating table from a stroke or heart attack. Though they didn't admit it, they didn't want to jeopardize their whole new program by having one of their first patients not survive the process, even if the procedure itself went without a mistake. Their advice to me was to go home and get my affairs in order. At best, they said I had about 5 months to live. Being only 41 years old, what they told me really didn't sink in. At least, not at first. My wife and I knew we had hit a rough patch in sailing in our lives. But, as of yet, we didn't really understand what was ahead. Our future was full of dreams and plans. Nowhere in those plans was there room for one of us dying. After all, I had several real estate projects underway and had commitments to fulfill. I guess it started to sink in when we were driving home and we realized that I hadn't been asked to make future appointments. At first, the death verdict had less impact on me than I would have expected. Maybe it was because of the bone-numbing fatigue I was feeling after months of little or no sleep caused by my condition. I then began to wonder, even if I did beat this problem, would I be able to find real, lasting happiness in the years to come? I asked myself again and again, was life really just about having more new cars, airplanes, bigger houses, and more vacations? But the life road just got steeper and rockier. Since I held no spiritual beliefs, my agnosticism provided the relief I needed. I believed it would be all over when I died, and looked forward to the oblivion and sleep it would provide. Since I believed that our beliefs form our reality, I had no fear of death. Once I became comfortable with the idea of oblivion, the world could go on without me. I had nothing to fear. From the beginning, I'd known my life was going to end in death eventually. It wasn't a question of if I were going to die, it was just when would I die. I rationalized. What difference would it make 1,000 years from now? Finally, I could sleep for a long, long time. I was amazed how appealing that thought became. While I hadn't reached the point of actually wanting to end it all myself, the idea of finally having plenty of sleep and eternal rest had a very strong appeal. One early morning, in the darkest part of the night just before dawn, I sensed the end was near. Struggling to breathe for months had left me feeling that nothing else mattered anymore but just being able to breathe and sleep. With each day was worse than the last, with tomorrow promising to be worse than today. All I wanted was relief at any cost. My medical condition had been getting progressively worse since I was told I had only 5 months to live 13 months earlier. For some time now, the only way I could sleep at all was sitting upright in a chair. Now, even that was no longer working very well. Also, the noise I made while trying to breathe made it impossible for my wife and I to be in the same room at night. Since my daughters were light sleepers, I now slept in my office downstairs. There I would spend the night, sitting in my old recliner, propped up straight and trying to sleep. I was all alone in my old recliner that night when, between a moment of sleep and a gasp of breath, I was suddenly falling through space. I just kept falling, tumbling through a black sky, gripped with paralyzing, stark, naked terror. Instead of waking up, as I had in other falling dreams in the past, I just kept falling and falling. I was tumbling out of control as I plummeted through the darkness. Gradually, as I tumbled, I became aware of a soft light in one part of the black sky. My attention was drawn to the light. It seemed to calm me. As I watched the light, my attraction towards it grew stronger and stronger. Even though I was struggling to keep the light in my vision, the more I focused on it, the calmer I became. Then I realized I was falling towards the light. The closer I came to the light, the brighter it grew. A feeling of profound peace and warmth began in my base chakra and spread upwards throughout my entire body as the tumbling slowed. In the distant horizon, silhouetted against the light, I saw what at first looked like an uneven line across the night sky. As I drew closer, it grew into a line of people that spanned the horizon. As they came out to greet me, backlit against the light, I knew them all. Some of them were from my life on earth, others were not. There was my grandfather Amos, along with my favourite dog Butch, his tail wagging and greeting. Both were central characters in the idealistic part of my childhood. There was also my wise old granddad Frank with his wry, bemused grin. Included in this welcoming was my sweet aunt Eleanor and my favourite uncle Sydney. There was even a man who lived on a ranch up the river from us, who had always been nice to me. He gave me a job, even when he really didn't need the help. I saw my favourite school teacher and various other people who had played a part in my life on earth, but had gone on ahead. As wonderful as it was to see those whom I loved in my current life incarnation, there were others. There were also entities I had known and loved from other times and other places, not of this incarnation. As we all met, the warmth in the pit of my stomach continued to grow. Soon I was flooded with the most intense feelings of love I had ever known. The love flowed through my core and back out to those around me. In a small way, it was like the coming home feeling I'd experienced back on Earth as a young man, returning home from the first trip to Europe. The army had taken me away for 3 years, and I was looking forward to seeing home again. As I drove up that old familiar road to the ranch, where I knew Mum and Dad were waiting, I felt that coming home feeling of warm, deep, unconditional love waiting for my return. However, to compare that with what I was feeling now would be like comparing a drop of seawater to the ocean. If I thought death just led to oblivion, I was wrong. My death was not just falling asleep into a state of nothingness forever. Rather, it was an awakening to a reality I couldn't imagine. As I was greeted by those I loved, I felt as if I were dissolving into the most intense love I had ever known. The love rolled over me like the waves of a great tsunami. A happy, joyous love full of anticipation, promise, and closure. No words were exchanged. Thoughts moved instantaneously with perfect clarity from one part of the eternal mind to the other, without the ability to withhold or judge anything. It was all an expression and celebration of love. On Earth, this reunion would have been unfathomable, between members of an ancient soul group who were celebrating the return home of one of their own. Slowly, as I looked at those gathered to greet me, I realized they were all there. Surprisingly, they were not only from this life, but also from a prior life in Germany. I realized that the same souls had possibly played different parts in my multiple lives. Sometimes these souls have been my daughter, my wife, or my mother. While at first this idea startled me, I was soon humbled. Who was I to tell God what he could or couldn't do with his creations? Just because some Sunday school teacher had different ideas about how things worked, it didn't really matter. My joy deepened as I realized I had only left behind an earthly vestige of those I love. The essence of each of those souls was also here with me now. Besides my friends and family, there were the friendly Germans who had been hauntingly familiar while I was a young soldier in Germany. Now I knew why they seemed so familiar to me at the time. They had been friends and family from a prior lifetime there. I now understood that I left nothing behind on earth. The eternal essences of all my loved ones from that life, as well as all other incarnations, were all here to greet me. All I had left behind was a character playing a role in a drama that we had chosen to experience. In the meantime, our real eternal essence remained in God's realm. Suddenly, it was all so simple. As I was shown around, it was explained to me how most of our celestial eternal knowledge is blanked out during our chosen lifespans on Earth. We must temporarily forget most of what our higher self already knows so we can immerse ourselves in the roles we have chosen to play. Furthermore, they said that it might take a while for all my knowledge and memories to return. To ease the transition back into this realm, I was told to think of my time on Earth as an extended visit into the ultimate theme park. Consider it a place with thrilling rides and various adventures that I could choose to experience or not. I was also reminded that the reason we leave the celestial realm at all was for the excitement, variety, adventure, and entertainment that different incarnations offer. However, To take all our celestial knowledge with us on our various adventures would have ruined the very experience that we had chosen to live. Someone there said that I should think of our trip to other realms as choosing a new novel to read. I can choose a new book depending on what I'm in the mood for. Furthermore, if I knew every turn and twist of the story line by line prior to reading it, it would spoil the fun. As one entity jokingly remarked, if the eternal divine part of us grows tired of singing and playing harps, there are thousands of other universes created for our spiritual growth, amusement, and entertainment. Eternity is a long time to do nothing but play harps. I heard this concept best expressed in the Course of Miracles. We are only here for 3 reasons. Firstly, to remember who we are. Secondly, to help others remember who they are. And thirdly, to enjoy the trip. Unless, of course, we use our free will and choose not to. As my orientation went on, they explained how that on that celestial side of the veil, anything we desire is instantly provided. We just need to feel the desire. However, within lies the reason for all the realms outside of heaven. Having everything we want all the time develops within us a desire for a variety and a change for a challenge. It would be like a game in which everyone has a winner. Soon the game would become boring and we would look for another, more challenging one. Somehow all this sounded familiar. To demonstrate the process of instantaneous fulfillment, one of them asked me to think about something I really desired. Thinking back on it, what I chose seemed odd since I was in such an esteemed place, demonstrating such an important concept. But suddenly I had an urge for a piece of my mother's famous homemade chocolate cake with a special fudge frosting. As soon as I thought of the cake, my earthly mother was handing me the biggest piece of dark chocolate cake I'd ever seen. Dare I say, it was heavenly? Although she appeared there with us, I knew some part of her was still back on earth because she had not yet died. My guess was that she was probably asleep, dreaming of lovingly making her son a piece of divine chocolate cake. After what could have been a few minutes or several hours of orientation, a deep silence began to descend over everything. An all-encompassing presence overshadowed the soul group as its members faded into the background. It was like being in a supermarket where music was playing in the background while shopping, and then hearing the volume fade as the voice overshadows the music, saying, "Shoppers, on aisle 7, there is a great special on red delicious apples." As everything else faded, a voice, which really wasn't a voice at all, said in resonating tones, "Welcome home, son. You've done a great job." In a continuing sense of profound love and acceptance, the voice continued, "But as long as you still have a body back on earth, would you like to get another one out of the way?" I instantly knew what he was referring to. I was being asked to return for some important scenes that were coming up in my current earthly drama. When I reincarnated in that lifetime, I had agreed to play the role of father to my 2 daughters, and now I was being asked if I was going to continue honoring that commitment. Additionally, at the time of my death, I hadn't believed in any form of reincarnation or anything else religious or spiritual. In spite of that, I instantly knew that I was being asked if I wanted to return to the earth drama I had just left behind. Now, my Sunday school teacher had always told us there is no pain in heaven. I can tell you now, at least in my case, she was wrong. I can still hear the agony of my echoing "no" still rattling around somewhere in those celestial realms. I knew in my heart of hearts and in the deepest core of my soul that I did not want to go back. After escaping the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God, as poet John Gillespie Maggie put it, I wanted to stay. After experiencing heaven, in no way did I want to return back to earth any time soon. If earth was a theme park, then they could have any part of my unused ticket they wanted. I had had enough drama for a while. I was finished with that petty, trite hellhole of an earth game. It all had become. Obviously, my view of this world reality had slipped in the latter parts of my adventure. It was as if I'd gotten my foot stuck in the track of the roller coaster. Even though I had people there whom in earthly realms I had loved as dearly as earthly conditions allowed, I had no desire to return once I'd seen the alternative. From that vantage point, I could see how trivial the world I'd left was. Here, on the other side, I would always be with souls who had loved me from the beginning of time and would continue to do so forever. Plus, I now knew that the loved ones who lagged behind on earth would join us momentarily. It might be years to them, but it would only be moments to us. Time is funny that way from a celestial view. What can a father say? Then, as I metaphorically went out the door, the voice continued, "Since you are going to be there for a while, there are a couple of things you could do for me. But don't worry, I'll have your soul guides send you a handbook on inner guidance so we can communicate. You already have the ability, but you just don't know how to listen. The book I'm sending will get you started." With a tremendous sense of loss, I went back to my life. I didn't realize that my real journey was just beginning. At the time, I could never have fathomed what was ahead. I didn't understand that I would be led to the kind of happiness on earth that I hadn't wanted to leave here in heaven. Nor could I have fathomed that inner guidance could bring the kind of happiness I'd been seeking as a young boy. It is ironic that I would experience the happiness that I had to die to discover. Over the next couple of years, I was returned to the afterlife on several other occasions. On one of these trips, I was shown why death and dying have gotten such a bum rap. After all, and from my perspective, there was nothing to fear in death. It's just the beginning of a new adventure, another chance to express yourself differently with souls you have loved, and cherished over many lifetimes and many realms. Now, I imagine death as being an e-ticket to the ultimate theme park, and I am the one who selects which part to experience. I also select the rides while I'm there. The rides can be scary or peaceful and loving. It's always my choice. If you don't like the ride you're on, get off and find one that is more to your liking the next time around. After all, when God created humans in his likeness, he promised an eternity of joy and happiness. Since eternity is such a long time and has no beginning or end, it covers all time everywhere. Lastly, I try to remember that if any time I'm not enjoying the adventure, I must be doing something wrong. And that is the end of Duane's, I don't know how to truly pronounce his name correctly, but yeah, I'll go with Duane. Experience. It's another one of these experiences where someone is stuck in their materialistic ways, and usually when they're like this, they have no spiritual element in their lives. It's just getting ahead in on a financial level is generally what happens here. They think that's all there is. They think there's nothing after this life, and they have their spiritual awakening, and this changes who they are, and this experience is pretty much like that to the T. So let's go through it again. He is sick. He is very sick. He's only 41 years old. He's married. He's got some daughters, and his condition leaves him extremely vulnerable to heart attacks and strokes. So he goes and gets it looked at, and the doctors say, "Yeah, look, you've only got about 5 months to live." And this is obviously hard to hear because he's only 41. He's got, probably another, if a normal life expectancy is anything to go by, he's got about, 40 plus years to go, or he would have thought before he had this appointment. And it's obviously hard to hear when you get told a diagnosis like this, as everything goes out the window. So this causes him to wonder what life is all about. He starts to question the way he's lived his life, and acquiring new things like cars and bigger houses, and going on more holidays, and just living life that way. And he's just wondering what has happened and what's going on. And I guess he is thinking, well, what happens from here when you die? And he's in a sick way. So as time goes by, he says he begins to sense the end is near. He's starting to struggle to breathe. He can't even get a good night's sleep in bed. He has to sit upright when he sleeps to help with his breathing, and this is causing him a great deal of suffering because not only is he very unwell, he's not getting a good night's sleep. So although the doctor said to him 5 months to go, 13 months later, he's still alive, and but he's in this position this particular night where he realizes the end is getting closer. He's struggling to breathe, and he's beginning to sense that this is probably almost the end for him. And during this night where he's sensing like he hasn't got long to go, he begins to suddenly just feel like he's falling. Like, I think most of us have had a dream where we feel like we're falling. I've had a couple, not for a long time, but more when I was a child, and I would always anyway, wake up just as I was about to hit the ground. So I know what these falling dreams are like. And in this case, he is falling, and in this situation, in this particular experience, he sees a light he's falling towards, and he realizes the further he falls, the light gets bigger and brighter, and also he gets a more profound feeling of peace and warmth as the light gets closer to him. And as he gets closer to the light, he begins to see some silhouettes, and these silhouettes he can't quite make out, but the closer he gets, he begins to see that actually people he knew, and like his grandfather, and he also sees his dog as well. And he says these people were central characters in his childhood. And the closer he gets, he sees more people, and some of them he recognizes from this lifetime, and others he says they're from other places, not of this carnation. He doesn't go into detail as to what that actually means, if it means other places means other planets, or if he means other times or other species even. But yeah, he says he recognizes some people but not all of them. So this is pretty incredible for this guy, because before this experience happened, he was of the firm belief that dying was the end of it all. There was nothing more than what we live as our life as humans. So he's beginning to realize now that he's gone into another dimension here. His thoughts of just closing your eyes and going off to sleep are not what is happening here, and he's actually gone into a dimension where there's even more possibilities to your existence than what there is on as a human. So he's surprised. He's shocked almost that this is what's happening to him, especially coming from a point of view with someone with little no faith or any spiritual beliefs. So he's gone from one extreme here to the other, and in this situation, in this case, he's having a pretty good experience. Some people aren't so lucky, but in this case, he seems to be being spiritually awoken in a very loving way. So he's being surrounded by all these beings that he recognizes, and this is when the love begins to become exchanged. They start, I don't know, exchanging love somehow, and he says it's like love is rolling over him like great tsunami, and it's just more blissful than anything you can imagine here on earth. There's no judgment. There's no you should have done this or you should have done that. It's just, he feels like he's come back home, and he doesn't get a life review. He just gets this reunion with these other souls he's known, he reckons, since the beginning of time. So he begins to get a little bit of a lesson as to what we come here for in this life. And I quite like the way this is written. He says, we must temporarily forget most of what our higher self already knows, so we can immerse ourselves in the roles we have chosen to play. So in this experience, he says that our higher selves, and everyone's higher selves, stays in heaven, and it's only a part of us that actually comes down to earth and experiences this life. You hear this every now and then, that there's only a little part of us here having this experience, whereas the rest of us is in a dimension that we never leave. So it's hard, I guess, for me to get my head around that, but I know I can sort of do it. But yeah, it's difficult thinking that there's another part of me, a bigger part of me, that is not here in this experience, and why this bigger part of me is having the experience it is through this body I'm in, and the body you're in. It seems almost cruel in a way, because of the hardship and challenges it faces. But I guess from your higher self's perspective, it knows it's all good. It knows what's going on, and this experience tries to address some of that, and to answer some of these questions, like why are we here? Like what is the point of all this difficulty we face as humans? And he says to think of this Earth visit as like a trip to an ultimate theme park. Consider it a place with thrilling rides and various adventures that you could choose to experience or not. We leave the celestial realm for an adventure, some variety, excitement, and entertainment that different incarnations offer. But whilst we're here, he's saying we don't actually remember where we're from or why we're even here, because if we did know why we were here, and where we actually come from, and if we had all the knowledge that our higher selves have, we couldn't have the adventure we're having on earth. So somehow having all that knowledge would ruin all the fun. And I guess I relate to that a little bit. If we did know the answer to everything, like, just there would be nothing to study. There would be, we would already know it all. We would know exactly, how everything works. So we wouldn't need to try to become better people because we would already be the best people we could be. There would be little purpose of this time on earth, because if everything was known, there would be nothing more to be learnt, and therefore it wouldn't be any different to us being home in the spiritual world. We would already have all that knowledge we have up there, but we'd just be down here. And maybe that's the direction this earth, these species, this human race is headed. I think it probably is. We're getting smarter and smarter and more evolved, and we're probably a long way off from getting to that point of equilibrium with the spiritual world, where we're just having a spiritual experience in a human body, and we know we're spirits, but I think we're a fair way off that. It's definitely starting to seep into my consciousness that this is what this experience is all about. But as far as it being a mainstream belief, I think that's going to take a little bit of time for it to totally sink into the whole population. And when we start seeing that sort of thing, we will start seeing things like countries disappear, and it becoming more of a global, humans will become more one, rather than the competition and separateness we see from different races and countries and even genders at the moment. It's definitely seems to be the direction we're heading in anyway, so hopefully we can get there sooner rather than later. And then he says, whilst in this experience and having this described to him as to why we're here, he says one of these entities who've come to meet him says, so eternity is a long time. We can get tired of just singing and playing harps. So although heaven is peaceful and love-filled and full of light and pain-free, we get sick of that as spirits. That's what this guy's saying. We start to crave spiritual growth through doing things like going into a human body, and this is one of the reasons we come here, is to have that separation from the light as we know it, to put ourselves in situations where we're forced to make tough decisions and have challenges which will hurt us, and also obviously have some blissful moments on earth too. But this is what this guy is saying here, that we come here to earth to get away from a situation where we're not really challenged, where we know everything already, where we have everything we want. All we have to do is think about what we want, and boom, it's instantly there. There's no challenge. And this sort of reminds me a little bit of the old spoiled child syndrome, where a little kid gets everything they want, and eventually they grow tired of that and look for other things that I don't know if that's a good example, but it just reminds me, as spirits, we get everything we desire. So we start to crave things that we have to work for more. It's something, if you got everything you need at your fingertips at all times, this guy's saying eventually that becomes boring. And I guess a better analogy is probably lotto winners. They win all the money they could ever dream of, and this might give them some short-term relief, but eventually the studies show that people who win lotto aren't as happy as people who continue to work and challenge themselves and um, put themselves through a life like everyone else. That's what, if you're doing what you love and you're working every day and so what I'm saying here is money just won't get you happiness, and this is probably also not a good example, but I can't really think of a good analogy here between our spirits having it all at all times and wanting to challenge ourselves and comparing that to something on earth. Because on earth, I guess we never really have everything we truly desire at all times. So it's a tricky one to compare, and I guess you have to be in that spiritual state, that spiritual realm, to really understand exactly why having everything you'd ever want at your fingertips at all times becomes tiresome. But anyway, this is what this guy's saying, and part of me does resonate with this. I seem to think that this is probably a good explanation of why God and us as individuations of God have created this universe, and why we are here today, where we put ourselves in a body that is stuck in a physical realm that is going to face some challenging moments, but also have some pleasurable ones on earth too. So yeah, I like that little explanation of why we're here. And he gives the example of, he puts this to the test. He says, okay, so if I can really get anything I want at any time and get instantly fulfilled, I'm going to imagine a nice big piece of my mum's chocolate cake. And sure enough, immediately his mum appears and gives him a nice big piece of her divine chocolate cake. And then he says he begins to hear a loud voice, and it's not. He says he hears a voice, but it's not really a voice at all. So I don't know. You guys try and get your head around that. It's one of those telepathic exchanges of communication that you can't actually hear, but you experience more through the way that these people communicate rather than we do with words. So the voice says, "Welcome home, son. You've done a great job in this." Like I said, is not communicated in words, but more telepathically. And with these words there's attached to it some profound love and acceptance. And the voice continues, but you've still got a body back on earth. Are you going to go back and get back into it? And he says at this point he realizes that before he came here, he made a certain list of things he wanted to do or achieve or accomplish, and part of this was being a father to his two daughters. And so he reluctantly, well, no, his instant thoughts are no. He says, no, I don't want to go back once you've touched the face of God. To think that you have to go back to this hellhole of an earth game, as he puts it, is unfathomable. He doesn't want to borrow it. He wants to stay in heaven, and why wouldn't you? You're being surrounded by these beings you've known for eternity. Like, that is a long time. Eternity. You're surrounded by love. You've got God. You've got no pain. It's just bliss, and you've got this whole universe of planets you can go and explore, and different avatars or bodies you can choose to incarnate in the next time, in the next life. And here he is being asked to go back into a body that is very unwell, and and I don't know the rest of his life situation. But once you've been in heaven, I guess it's going to be difficult to want to leave. And but like I was talking about before, obviously the spirit gets not tired of having everything at once, but just wants that extra challenge to try a different type of existence. Because spiritual life is obviously very different to this physical realm we're all in now, and it's just a bit of an adventure for the soul. And then he realizes, okay, well, this human life that you and I are living now, is it seems like a long time for us, but in the spiritual realm where there's no time, it's everything. I don't know how to describe it, but there's no such thing as time. It's probably the only words I can use. This human life is over so quick from their point of view. It's like a blink of an eye. So he begins to realize, yeah, okay, it's tough down there, but it's also a truly magnificent adventure, and a miraculous one, and decides, okay, I'll go back. And he's told when he goes back that he will have some inner guidance or connection to his guides once he returns. And with that, he goes back, and he says next time and then he gets to go back a few times over the years back to this next dimension. It's like he is blessed with this gift of being able to transcend the physical to the spiritual, and he is able to do that on a number of occasions. So he leaves us with this experience by saying, I try to remember that if at any time I'm not enjoying this adventure, I'm doing something wrong. So that's a bit of wisdom for us all. If we're going through a patch where life is not that great, whether that be just a moment in the day, or whether it's more of a prolonged darkness, he claims in this experience that he's not doing something right. He can I guess by what he's saying here is he can always try and see some positives in any negative, and I tend to agree with that. But in my experience, it's very difficult to get out of a patch of darkness in this life. It's got the ability to drag you down hard sometimes, and I struggle myself personally to see positives in negative situations sometimes. But if you can try at least, it might help, and that's what I'm trying to do, is try to be more optimistic. But yeah, that's the end of his experience. Let's take a couple of minutes to meditate, to just listen to what you can hear around you. I was watching a show the other day, and it was a very violent show and very unspiritual, if that's the words you'd like to use. And I was getting a little bit frustrated, and then out of nowhere, it just started to get a little bit more profound and deep. And one of the main characters started talking about God, and he said, okay, so the scientists say there's a big bang, and this is why the planets are here and why we're here right now. But before that, there was something that must have caused the big bang, because something can't come out of nothing. And this was his logic for why we're here, why the universe is here. And I liked it because it's keeps it very simple, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, all this that we're experiencing right now all started because God, or whatever you want to believe, even us as spiritual beings, created all this universe, this theme park, if you want to call it that. And that's why we are here today, because you can't get something out of nothing, and that nothing is what God is, what you and me are, and it is a place for us to play in for eternity. And reading experiences like this reminds me of what we truly are, and it helps me to cope with this life, and reminds me that there is a loving place we come from, and a loving place we go back to, and a loving place those ones we've lost are at the moment. And it's always good to read and experience and have those, I don't know if memories is the right word, rekindled. It's more a reminder, or a pointer as to why we're here, and where we came from, and where we get to go again one day. So thank you for listening. I love you for listening, and keeping an open mind to all this stuff. I know it's a topic that isn't mainstream as yet, but I hope to see that change as my life goes on. And I'm 47 now, but hopefully by the time I'm ready to go home, it's become a little bit more commonplace for people to believe in this sort of stuff. So good on you for being one of the trendsetters in this subject, and hopefully it gives you as much fascination and peace and love that it gives me. So yeah, I'll talk to you next week. Sending you love. Goodbye.